Yeah, that's actually an important point to make here is that when we're talking about the prefabricated history, there's the real world we experience that we're also seeing reported. Then there are their fake events that they insert for the purposes of provoking the masses. But then you also have to factor in the fact that they curate reality as much by ignoring or omitting as by proactively creating things. And so what they omit covers pretty much all of what you talk about, the whistleblowers, the, the dissidents, the non-believers. Yeah, we're just not acknowledged. Like I would say that we're not censored. Media skeptics who call things fake, we're not censored. We're just not acknowledged. It's not quite the same thing because if they censored us, they would acknowledge we exist, which would
Correct.
amplify us. So
Yes.
I'm not worried about being censored because the instant they say the word auto hoaxer or a word like metascript or concurrent programming, it will open a can of worms because we've laid the foundation to understand this stuff in blogs and podcasts for years. The instant these memes go viral, their system's going to be challenged by a greater number of people. So instead, they will conveniently ignore us for as long as it's possible to do so.
Yes, and then by the use or how they use the language and they appropriate the words like auto hoaxer is also another strategy because it sort of makes those that would try to communicate that unthinkable within the system, unthinkable idea that the history is a performance being performed right now. So it wasn't performed in the past, like a singular thing. It is an ongoing performance. And how they do it is exactly by appropriating, oh, an auto hoaxer, he's a crazy, right? He's someone that believes also this and that and the other because they
Yes.
have pointed the cameras and the microphones to strategically placed shills that would perform in that way, right? That would mix the off-world stage perspective with other garbage that has no place, right? And
They do it all the time. They took
mhm,
the word fake away from us, starting
right.
with Trump, where the word fake no longer means the same thing. So we have to be more expansive. I no longer say hoaxes because that isolates it to like an event by a small group to trick the world. So I've been saying instead of fake or hoax, I'll say staged historic event, prefabricated historic event, because these events are persistent and they remain. And you might also look at the modern concept of the flat earther as a media construct designed to destroy the credibility of anybody who questions NASA.
Yes, yes. And one thing, I have my ideas upon this, and I'll expose them later. But why do you think it's so hard for a lot of people to let go of what you call the bloody guardrail, which is that there were actually deaths, and yes, this was fake, but this and that guy really died, or you know what I mean, right? So how do you
Yes.
why do you think it is so hard for people to see that if it's a stage performance, if it is a performance, period, doesn't need to be on a stage, there wouldn't be any deaths, and if there would be deaths, it would invalidate the whole charade. Why do you think it's so hard?
I think there's a couple of reasons. One being when they process it as real and there's real deaths, there's a deeper level of threat and emotion attached to it. And so now they're conditioned to respond to these things as a threat to their existence, their family, their nation. And I think that makes the belief that much more deeply held as a conviction that, okay, this group's the enemy because look what they did. They hurt us. So it puts them in a state of war. And so now they have this emotional attachment to it. And then the second part is if you get them to question it, it brings up that emotion. They become combative and they want to defend their belief because it's not objective. So if you get past that, then there's the ego part where if they've been promoting the idea that these events are nefarious sacrifices and this bad guy is oppressing us, they have to admit it's kind of like it's humiliating. They have to admit they were wrong. So for many people, there's the ego boundary. And then finally, I think there's the fact that you're going into a fringe. So if you're a conspiracy theorist, you have a lot of people who have your back. But when you reject even the conspiracy theorist view, now you're in a smaller group. So you lose the safety of the herd. But I think largely it's because we're dealing with the attachment to a story that was formed in a very emotional state.
Right. Well, about the ego guardrail, I agree with you, although I use the word ego in a different manner, as you've seen in my book. But yes, I understand what you mean. It's like that if I have already invested my belief into this, now I can't turn back because it's gone past not the point of no return, but it's so hard because you've invested so much into it, right? Emotionally into this idea, and therefore it's hard to step back from it, or to completely step away from it. My idea about, and I agree with yours, but I would complement that with my ideas about how it's so hard. It's also within the system that it has been promoted. You see a lot of movies and themes in media about Gnosticism. Now, when we look at, for example, one of the pillars of Gnosticism is the Nag Hammadi library, and I know that you've been looking recently into it. When you look at the history or the story of how the Nag Hammadi was found, it's ludicrous. It's absolutely ridiculous to consider that it happened that way.
So you don't just automatically believe that they found ancient scriptures in these spaces, like on some guy's farmland, and that you trust what it said.
And and it wasn't just that. It was that there was this woman that was using it for fire kindling, to kindle her fireplace. And he arrived just in time to prevent those priceless parchments. I mean, it's ridiculous. But anyway.
It's like the Mormons and their discs. You know, that you have all these, and this is how they insert these divine things, is by making them anonymous. Like, people trust Q because it's anonymous. So no, I don't trust any revealed scripture, and they cleverly revealed it instead of having it done through apostles and evangels. We found it. Like it convinces people. Plus, it's anonymous, so who are you going to question?
Yes, and there's a parallel to that, actually. I'm not going to go into that needlessly now, but there's a parallel to that, which were the Katakamuna scriptures in Japan. And they were found, I mean, it's similar, by someone, and they were hidden under a mountain. And they were, I don't know if they were surveying the mountain to check to build something or something like that. And there was a guy that appeared, a mysterious man that appeared out of nowhere and gave this engineer or something like that these old parchments. And he was able to translate them. And they were all filled with basically Gnostic philosophy that actually points towards quantum mechanics. So that is very interesting because Japan was also used as a very important hotspot for quantum physics. They have the, what's it called, Kamiokande, which is a sort of like CERN accelerator. That's where they discovered, quote unquote, that neutrino had mass. So it was a big advancement in quantum physics and so on and so forth, which we know is linked neatly with simulationism. And I think that one day it will be sold as a scientific thing. But that's beside the point. What I was bringing up Gnosticism about was that one of the main ideas behind Gnosticism is that we live in a fake world ruled by a demiurge, right? So by a god that thinks he's a god and he's not, or that he usurped the light of God and is building his own farm, let's say. And it's basically, it leads a lot of people in Gnosticism to consider that they live in hell, right? So if you believe that you live in hell, of course people died in psyops. You understand? Of course, they would be evil enough to do all the Epstein email things, right? Of course, the children are being trafficked in the underground caves of Afghanistan or whatever it is.
Yes.
You know, you understand what I'm trying to say? Like,
yes, that would be considered the appeal to motive fallacy, where if you can essentially start with the premise that you have this evil entity, then anything that you promote, any idea that you put out there that you're alleging that the other side is doing is justified, because it's like, of course they would do this. They're so bad. This is what they would do. So yeah, if you assume the world's controlled by a malevolent entity, well, now you can say to people like me who say these things are fake, you're like, and I hear this a lot. Oh, so you think that the bad guys aren't that bad, that they're not actually killing people. You think they're good and they love us. And I'm saying, no, I'm not starting with the premise that they even exist the way you are and arguing from that. And so I think you're right. I think that's a way of setting the stage to get people to accept things.
Yeah, and also one thing that you just mentioned now is also another technique, which is, oh, you don't consider that they, okay, in that discussion, right? You don't consider that they would be capable of doing this. Therefore, you think they love us and they want, you know, it's either one or the other. It's either they hate us or they love us, right? And this is really, it's crazy if you think about it. You know, everywhere you look in life, I mean, around you, even in the animal world, whatever, right? You don't see only good and only evil. You know, you see, you know, behavior. Sometimes it leans towards one, sometimes it leans towards another, right? It's not an absolute. There's no, you know, angels and demons. There's a lot of things in between, because if you want to have an angel, right, if you want to have the idea that there's this angelic external being that is there, you know, like Jesus or something, right, that is there to save you, you of course need that angel to save you from something, right? And if it's saving you from something, it has to save you from its opposite. So a demon or an antichrist, right? And if you are able to exclude these two extremes, you are able to see life for what it is. And life includes, you know, pleasure, pain. It's part of it. It's included in it. It's not hell because it has pain, because it doesn't include only pain. It also has its opposite, right? And it's not heaven because it's not just pleasure. It also includes pain. So life is as it is. And we can only try to really discover what, you know, this world is. And of course, I do agree with your ideas on the feedback, the individual feedback thing that you've been discussing or presenting recently. But that's beside the point here, is that we can only begin to actually explore that. And in the globe skeptic days, flat earth days, it would be, you know, to explore beyond Antarctica. That was that song from Crow, what was his name?
Yeah,
Chief Crow. Yeah.
Chief Crow, yeah, the Antarctic expedition. The idea here is, don't accept the map they've given you, because from what we've seen, the map is not the territory.